Deep in the heart of the jungle, where the trees whisper ancient secrets, and the air is thick with mystery, there's a story few have heard. A forbidden love, one that defies the boundaries of species and nature itself. It's a tale of unexpected connection, where strength and vulnerability collide in the most unlikely of places. And it all began with a single chance encounter. Meet Kazi, leader of his troop, protector of the jungle. His strength is unmatched, his presence undeniable. He commands respect, not just from his kind, but from every creature in this vast, untamed land. Kazi's world is one of survival, of ancient rules passed down from generation to generation. But even in this world of dominance and control, there's something more. A deep, unspoken understanding of the jungle's balance, its power, and its vulnerabilities. And then there's Nala. Young, free-spirited, and full of life. She roams the jungle not as a leader, but as a wanderer, a curious soul seeking the hidden corners of the world. Her heart is open, her eyes always searching for new friends, new experiences. But in this world, where boundaries are drawn and rules are sacred, their paths were never meant to cross. Until, one fateful day, they did. Kazi's senses are sharp. He knows when his territory is being invaded, when the safety of his troop is threatened. And so, when Nala unknowingly steps into his world, the jungle is suddenly alive with a different energy. A meeting that would change everything. Would this be a confrontation, a warning, or the beginning of something more? To find out, we must go deeper into the jungle and into the heart of this forbidden love. Kazi moved through the jungle with a sense of purpose, his powerful frame cutting through the underbrush as he led his troop. Every step was deliberate, the air thick with the weight of his responsibility. His troop followed closely behind, mirroring his every move, their eyes scanning the jungle around them. As the leader, Kazi held the balance of power, ensuring that they were always alert, always safe. His gaze swept over the dense forest, knowing that danger could be lurking at any moment. And yet, there was a calmness in him, an understanding that this jungle was his home and he was its guardian. On the other side of the jungle, Nala wandered freely, her large, gentle eyes wide with curiosity. The towering trees and the soft, moss-covered ground were a world she was just beginning to understand. She wasn't concerned with the threats that might be out there. For her, the jungle was an adventure waiting to be explored. Her ears flapped excitedly as she tromped through the forest, taking in everything with the playful innocence of a young elephant. As Nala continued her journey, she stumbled into a part of the jungle she had never seen before, a lush clearing, bathed in the soft light filtering through the leaves. The sound of the wind rustling through the trees was calming, almost hypnotic. But there was something else in the air, a sense of power, an energy that made her pause. She was not alone. Kazi, sensing an intruder in his territory, stopped in his tracks. His muscles tensed, his sharp eyes locking on Nala, who stood still, unaware of the danger that now loomed over her. She was a giant in her own right, but compared to Kazi, she was still a newcomer to this part of the jungle. He growled softly, warning her to stay away. But Nala, ever the curious soul, took a step forward, undeterred by the warning. At that moment, time seemed to slow. Kazi's gaze softened, and Nala, sensing no immediate threat, felt a strange sense of calm wash over her. She tilted her head, studying the imposing gorilla before her, sensing no malice in his eyes. There was something unspoken between them, a recognition that both were creatures of this jungle, bound by its rules, yet separate in their own worlds. After a long, tense silence, Kazi took a slow step forward, his massive frame dwarfing Nala. She didn't move, meeting his gaze without fear. The jungle around them seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next move. And then, without a word, Kazi turned and began to walk away, his back to Nala. She, curious and drawn to him, followed. Their first encounter was brief, but it was enough. Something had sparked between them, an unspoken connection neither of them could yet understand, but both felt undeniably. The jungle, for all its dangers, had just begun to change for them both. As days passed, Kazi and Nala's paths continued to cross in the jungle. Each time, the encounters felt less like chance and more like destiny. Kazi, ever vigilant, began to watch over Nala from a distance. He saw her wandering the same trails, always curious, always exploring. There was something about her spirit that intrigued him. Her carefree nature was a stark contrast to his own serious demeanor. But despite their differences, there was a quiet understanding between them, as if the jungle itself was telling them their paths were meant to intertwine. Nala, for her part, was fascinated by Kazi. She'd never seen a creature so powerful, yet so calm. She admired how he moved through the jungle with such confidence, how every decision he made was purposeful, like he understood the jungle better than anyone else. There was something magnetic about him, a force of nature that she couldn't quite put into words. She found herself seeking him out, drawn to the mysterious gorilla who seemed to hold the secrets of the jungle. One afternoon, as the sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows through the trees, Kazi found Nala near a quiet riverbank, dipping her trunk into the water to drink. He approached slowly, his heavy footsteps barely making a sound. When Nala saw him, she didn't flinch or run, as many animals might have done. Instead, she greeted him with a gentle rumble, a soft trumpet of acknowledgement. Kazi nodded in return, his eyes calm, but there was something more in them, a warmth that hadn't been there before. Over time, Kazi began to show Nala the hidden corners of the jungle, the places he had known since he was a young gorilla. He led her to secret waterfalls, their waters sparkling under the midday sun, and ancient trees, their roots twisting deep into the earth, holding the wisdom of centuries. Nala reveled in these quiet moments, her large ears flapping excitedly as she discovered the world through Kazi's eyes. In return, Nala shared with Kazi the joy she found in the simplest things, the feel of the soft earth beneath her feet, the rhythm of the jungle's heartbeat, and the joy of being alive in a world so full of wonder. But with each passing day, their connection deepened, and so did the tension. Kazi was not a creature of the wild who could easily ignore the rules of his kind, and Nala, though she was free-spirited, was bound to the traditions of her herd. They both knew the jungle did not easily tolerate relationships that defied its boundaries. Their bond, though built on mutual respect and understanding, had become something more, something forbidden. As they spent more time together, the jungle around them seemed to grow quieter, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Kazi found himself torn between his duty to his troop and the growing feelings he had for Nala. He had always believed that the jungle's rules were sacrosanct, that no two species should mix, no matter how strong the connection. Yet, with every shared moment, every glance exchanged, his certainty wavered. Nala, too, felt the pull of the jungle's expectations, but she couldn't deny the bond that was forming between them. She had never felt so understood, so at peace. One evening, as the sun set behind the trees, casting the jungle in a warm golden light, Kazi and Nala stood side by side, looking out over the vast, untamed landscape. It was in this quiet moment that the weight of their connection hit them both. They had grown close in a way neither could have anticipated, but they both knew what they shared could not remain a secret forever. Sooner or later, the jungle would demand answers. As the days went on, whispers began to spread through the jungle. The animals had begun to notice the unusual bond between Kazi and Nala. Their meetings, once a quiet curiosity, had become a cause for concern. The jungle was built on ancient rules, and those rules were clear. The animals of the jungle kept to their own kind. Cross-species relationships were unheard of, and the consequences of breaking that sacred boundary were severe. Some believed that such an unnatural bond could bring imbalance to the jungle itself. The tension in the air grew palpable. Kazi's troop, once harmonious and free, began to murmur among themselves. His closest companions, those who had always followed his lead, began to question his judgment. The leader of the troop had always been a symbol of strength and tradition, but now they saw him spending more and more time with Nala. The question lingered. Was this bond with the elephant a sign of weakness, or a betrayal of the jungle's natural order? Nala, too, was feeling the pressure. Her herd, guided by the wisdom of her mother, was beginning to notice her frequent absences. She had always been a curious soul, but this connection with Kazi was unlike any bond she had ever known. She found herself drawn to him, even as the weight of her herd's expectations bore down on her. Her mother, strong and protective, had always taught her that family and tradition came first. But now, Nala was caught in a dilemma. Her heart wanted Kazi, but her loyalty to her herd tugged her in a different direction. One day, Nala's mother approached her, concern etched into her features. "You've been distant lately," she said, her voice heavy with caution. "Where do your loyalties lie? With your herd or with him?" Nala could feel the pressure mounting. Her mother's words were not just a question, they were an ultimatum. She had always known the importance of staying true to her herd, but now she was torn. Could she truly abandon the connection she had with Kazi? And would her herd ever accept this bond she shared with the gorilla? In the same breath, Kazi's troop was growing restless. Some of his closest allies, those who had been by his side through every challenge, now began to openly criticize his actions. "You've broken the code," they would say. This cannot be allowed." Kazi, usually so steadfast in his decisions, found himself torn between the jungle's expectations and his growing feelings for Nala. The loyalty he felt toward his troop, toward his own kind, began to clash with the undeniable pull of his heart. Could he lead his troop with honor if he continued down this path? The jungle, once a place of peace and balance, was now charged with uncertainty. The very fabric of its existence was being questioned. The council of animals, wise and old, the voices of tradition, called for a meeting. They would decide what to do about this forbidden love that had begun to shake the foundations of their world. The tension was thick, the stakes high. Would Kazi and Nala's connection be tolerated, or would their love lead to their exile from the jungle they both called home? Both Kazi and Nala knew that something had to give. The jungle was closing in around them, and they couldn't remain in the shadows forever. The day of reckoning was coming, and soon they would have to choose their love or their place in the jungle's ancient hierarchy. The weight of tradition loomed over them, but in their hearts, they knew one thing. They could not simply walk away from what had grown between them. But would the jungle allow them to love freely, or would they be torn apart by the very forces they had come to trust? The day had come. The jungle, once a peaceful haven, now thrummed with an electric tension. Every animal, from the smallest squirrel to the great predators of the jungle, seemed to sense that something momentous was about to happen. Kazi and Nala, once free to roam the vastness of their shared world, were now bound by a harsh reality. The council of the jungle's wisest creatures had summoned them for a confrontation, one that would determine the fate of their forbidden love. Kazi stood tall before the council, his mighty form still as commanding as ever. But now, there was a quiet uncertainty in his eyes. He had always known what his place in the jungle was. He was a leader, a protector, a creature of tradition. But now, in front of the council, he wasn't just defending his place in the jungle. He was defending something deeper, a bond with Nala that couldn't be easily explained, let alone understood. Nala stood beside him, her usual confidence replaced by a sense of vulnerability. She had never been one to bow to tradition, but today, as she faced the judgment of the council, the weight of her herd's expectations pressed down on her. Her heart ached for Kazi, for the bond they had forged, but she also knew the consequences of defying the jungle's laws. Could she truly risk it all for this love? The council was quiet. their ancient eyes fixed on Kazi and Nala. The creatures of the jungle, old, wise, and steeped in the traditions of their kind, watched the two intently. Their voices carried the weight of centuries, and now they would decide whether the bond between Kazi and Nala would be tolerated or condemned. One of the elder creatures, a massive panther with eyes that had seen more seasons than most, spoke first. "The jungle has always followed its rules," he said, his voice deep and grave. "The balance is maintained through order, through boundaries. But now we are faced with a disruption, a bond between species that could shatter the delicate harmony we've held for so long." His gaze shifted to Kazi. "Tell us, Kazi, do you truly believe that this connection with the elephant is worth the risk? Worth the potential destruction of the balance we've fought to preserve?" Kazi's gaze was steady, but there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. He had always believed in the importance of balance, of tradition, but Nala had shown him a different side of the jungle, one where love, respect, and understanding could exist outside of the old rules. He spoke slowly, his voice filled with conviction. "I have led my troop through many trials, but none have been as difficult as this. I do not take this lightly, nor do I believe that breaking the rules will come without consequences. But the jungle is not just about following laws. It's about understanding its spirit, its heart. Nala has shown me that the heart of the jungle is bigger than the laws we've set." There was a long silence. The jungle seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for the council's response. Then, an older female gorilla, her fur graying with age, spoke up. "You speak of the jungle's heart, Kazi. But what of the heart of the jungle itself? Does it not beat for unity, for harmony among all creatures? Your bond with the elephant goes against the very fabric of this jungle. It could invite chaos, disrupt the peace we have fought for." Her voice trembled slightly, but there was a quiet strength in it. "Do you understand the risk you take? Not just for yourselves, but for all of us?" Nala's heart pounded in her chest. The decision had been made, the jungle had spoken, and Kazi and Nala had been granted a chance to prove their love. But as they left the council's gathering, the weight of the jungle's judgment still hung over them. Their love had been accepted, but only on one condition. They had to prove its strength, its purity, and its worth to the very heart of the jungle itself. The eyes of every creature in the jungle were now upon them, and they knew that their bond would be tested like never before. Kazi and Nala stood together in the clearing, the place where they had first met. The sun was setting, casting a golden light over the landscape, but the beauty of the moment was overshadowed by the knowledge of what lay ahead. They knew that the path forward wouldn't be easy. The jungle was vast, unpredictable, and full of dangers. But as they stood side by side, there was an unspoken understanding between them. They had each other, and together they could face whatever the jungle had in store. Days turned into weeks, and the jungle seemed to test them at every turn. Kazi and Nala ventured deeper into the wilderness, navigating the dense undergrowth, crossing rivers, and facing the predators that lurked in the shadows. With each trial, their bond grew stronger. Kazi's strength and wisdom balanced Nala's curiosity and joy, and together, they learned to trust one another completely. They became more than just two creatures from different worlds. They became partners, united by their love and their desire to protect the jungle they called home. Yet, the jungle never let up. One day, as they journeyed through a particularly dense part of the forest, a storm rolled in unexpectedly. The skies darkened and the winds began to howl. Trees swayed, their branches creaking under the pressure. Nala, frightened by the sudden intensity of the storm, looked to Kazi for reassurance. But it wasn't just the storm that threatened them. It was the predators that had sensed their vulnerability. In the chaos of the storm, a pack of wild dogs emerged from the shadows, their eyes gleaming with hunger. Kazi immediately positioned himself between Nala and the pack, his massive frame a barrier of protection. He let out a fierce roar, his powerful voice booming through the jungle, a warning to the pack to back off. but the dogs were relentless, and the storm made it difficult for Kazi to fully defend Nala. The pack circled closer, sensing the opportunity to strike. Nala, though frightened, refused to run. She knew that Kazi was protecting her, and she would not leave his side. With a mighty trumpet, she charged at the pack, using her strength and size to push them back. The wild dogs hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to handle the unexpected challenge. Kazi, seeing Nala's courage, roared once more, his voice ringing through the jungle with authority. Together, they drove the pack away, the wild dogs retreating into the storm. Exhausted but victorious, Kazi and Nala stood side by side, breathing heavily in the aftermath of the attack. Their bond, tested by the storm and the threat of the predators, had proven its strength. They had protected each other, and in doing so, they had proven to the jungle that their love was as powerful as any force of nature. As the storm finally began to subside, the jungle seemed to acknowledge their triumph. The clouds parted, and the sun began to shine through once more, casting light on the path ahead. Kazi and Nala shared a quiet moment, the weight of the battle lifting from their shoulders. They had survived together, and they knew that whatever challenges the jungle threw their way, they would face them as a team, united in love and strength. Their journey wasn't over. The jungle would continue to test them, to challenge their bond. But Kazi and Nala had learned something invaluable. They didn't need the approval of the council or the expectations of the jungle to define their love. Their love was their own, and no storm, no predator, no force in the jungle could ever take that away. Together, they would face whatever came next, knowing that as long as they had each other, they were unstoppable. The jungle had accepted them, but more importantly, they had accepted each other. And in the heart of this vast, untamed world, they had found something far stronger than tradition or rules, a love that was truly their own. The jungle had changed. It was no longer a place defined solely by tradition, by rules that dictated every creature's place in the world. No, the jungle had adapted, grown, and learned. The love between Kazi and Nala had begun to shift the very heart of the jungle, showing the animals that sometimes the strongest bonds were those that defied the expectations of the past. The jungle had witnessed their love survive the trials it had thrown at them, and now a quiet transformation was underway. Kazi and Nala had become symbols of courage, unity, and the power of love. As they walked through the jungle side by side, the creatures who once whispered about their forbidden bond now watched them with respect. They had proven that their connection wasn't a threat to the jungle, but rather a force that could bring it closer together. Slowly, the whispers turned into nods of approval. The jungle, once so divided, was beginning to heal. What had once seemed impossible now felt inevitable. One morning, as the sun rose over the horizon, Kazi and Nala found themselves at the center of a great gathering. The animals of the jungle, gorillas, elephants, birds, and creatures of every kind, had come together to witness something unprecedented. They had come to see Kazi and Nala and the bond they had created, no longer as outcasts, but as leaders. It was a moment of unity, a testament to how far the jungle had come. The jungle's heart had accepted them, and now it seemed as though it was embracing change. Kazi stood at the front of the gathering, his powerful form still commanding attention, but now there was a quiet pride in his eyes. Nala stood beside him, her large ears flapping gently, her trunk raised in a gesture of both strength and humility. Together, they looked out over the assembly of creatures, knowing that this moment was theirs to share. The jungle had finally accepted their love, and in doing so, it had accepted the idea that even the deepest traditions could evolve. The elder animals, those who had once opposed their union, now stepped forward, their faces soft with a newfound understanding. The panther, who had been so firm in his belief that the jungle's laws were sacred, now bowed his head in recognition. "You have proven your love," he said, his voice steady but warm. You have shown us that the heart of the jungle is not confined to the rules we've always followed. It beats for all who respect it, no matter their kind. What you have done is not just a victory for you, but for us all. The jungle's transformation was no longer just a symbol of Kazi and Nala's love. It was a reminder that the world could change, that even the deepest, most entrenched traditions could be challenged and reshaped for the better. The animals who had once believed that boundaries must be upheld above all else, now understood that love, true love, could transcend even the greatest of divides. Together, Kazi and Nala had brought the jungle together. They had shown the creatures of the wild that no bond was too strange, no love too impossible. The jungle had embraced their union, and in doing so, it had redefined its own future. No longer was it a place ruled solely by fear and tradition. Now, it was a place where unity, love, and respect could flourish, no matter the differences that once separated them.